space program. This is episode 7, and we're going to continue back at trying to land our probe, or rather our lander onto the moon with 2 Kerbals in it. So let's just go ahead and resume that real quick. And we will bring up our lander and go ahead and resume real quick. And so y'all may remember from the last episode, the way that we're essentially doing this is we are using a sort of hybrid between Kerbin orbit rendezvous and lunar orbit rendezvous, which of course means that in the previous episode we spent a lot of our time docking the service module to this lander. And so what we're going to do here is we are going to go ahead and begin aiming for the moon. We will just go ahead and get that going real quick. We have a fairly good inclination, which is good because that means it'll be easier for our space probe to reach where we're trying to go. And that should mean that we should have no trouble hitting the moon at all. So we're gonna start with this trans-lunar injection, and we're going to try to get this down to a fairly decent point. So we're just going to go ahead and start burning right now. So let's just go ahead and kick up the we'll go ahead, we'll kick up the whatchamacallit, throttle, and we're going to use RCS to give us a bit of a boost because while we could in principle just do it on the fuel on the spacecraft alone, we do want to save as much fuel as possible. And we do have a bunch of RCS fuel available, so it doesn't seem like a bad idea to me. So we're going to come in, as you can see, at a periapsis of about 104 kilometers above the lunar surface. And that's probably not such a bad deal. That will allow us to easily correct our or get into low lunar orbit, which we want to be, so that it's easy for our spacecraft to get in. In fact, you know, I did something wrong here. I actually need to shut these engines down. And wow, it looks like I probably should have waited on that. So yeah, now we're spinning out of control. That's not good. Let's just see if we can counteract that. So we did lose a little bit of propellant in the process, but that's okay. That's something, of course, the reason we shut down the engines here is because they're not really necessary for what we're trying to do. And we probably will come in just a little bit behind schedule because of that. But that's okay, we won't use too much fuel in getting there. And hopefully, we didn't screw ourselves over too much in doing that. I think we do have enough fuel for our lander, which is going to, that's gonna be a good deal for us, for sure. we don't really have too much in the way of, there we go. We don't have too much in the way of, our deal here. We probably could have, avoided, you know, some of this delay and some of this fuel usage by not using the other engines. There's really not much we can do about that now. And we do still have plenty of fuel left, because we are going to have to get in eventually and, fuel the lander, so we're just going to time warp to, our encounter real quick, because that will help us get exactly to where we need to go. So, that part shouldn't really take too terribly long. And I found that the whole time warp flag for SOI doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really take all that much time if, we kick down time warp to a reasonable amount here, so let's go ahead and try that. There we go, so, now all we have to do is kick down this orbit a little. Let's see. I think we'll have just enough in the way of, our orbit to decelerate as necessary. And I'm gonna go for, I don't know, maybe about 40k above the surface. Another thing I think I want to do is I'm gonna plug in my mouse so we can zoom in, because it does make sense for us to more or less, you know, go ahead and zoom in when we get close, just so we can more finely control our heading. So let's go ahead and I will have this thing pointed in hopefully the right direction. And we will go ahead and bring this thing down as much as we can. So we're about 5 minutes into our burn. It's going to be a fairly short burn, as you can see. I mean, it says it'll take 2 seconds. I don't really trust this thing to give us an accurate measurement, so I'm going to start about 10 seconds in or so. And of course, we will use our RCS here to help us. So the question is, do we have enough fuel to get off the surface? And I think the answer to that is probably going to be yes, but that is going to be difficult to tell for sure. I think definitely we will get down to the surface, and that's not going to be an issue. The issue is rather going to be getting back, because we do want enough fuel to at least you know, to at least do our rendezvous. But fortunately for us, that's not going to be as difficult as, it's not going to be as difficult as I think it'll look. So let's just zoom in here. Let's bring our axis down to somewhere around 37k. Let's not do an inclination change. It's going to take a bunch of fuel, and I think we're about as inclined as we're going to get with this. So we'll just bring down our apoapsis here to, see, that's 54. That is 40. Can we do a little bit better? It's 39. There we go. I think that's perfect. So we should more or less be in line with the planet now. And the question at this point is going to be whether or not we can actually find, you know, a decent area to land. And I think if we land near or close to our probe that we sat down earlier, or our rover, then we might do pretty well in that regard. Of course, the thing that I should have done is I should have done a quick save. You know, just in case something like what just happened went wrong. Of course, it's entirely possible that when we get out here that we will have, you know, exactly the amount of fuel needed to get back, and it's definitely I think that is worth trying to figure in. I think definitely we won't use as much fuel as we think we will, and in fact I'm a little bit late, but that's going to be okay. And I think that orbit right there is going to be just fine. So now we just need to find ourselves a little place to land. And of course, one thing we can do here is we can transfer in, or I guess rather, we'll transfer this out. And this is mostly just to keep our mass centered into the middle of the landing stage. So we are going to have to be incredibly careful here, because if we aren't, we can end up stranding our Kerbals on the moon, which is not what we want to do. We want to, I mean, I suppose we could mount a rescue mission if that ends up being the case, to put them onto the moon, but we don't really want to worry about it if we don't have to. So here we will go ahead and begin fueling. And this will unfortunately take most of our fuel. In fact, I'm going to start fueling this thing first, because I think that will be an issue for us. Unfortunately, there's no way to revert the flight now, so I think we're going to have to send a rescue mission. But that that may be a little bit easier to correct. I mean, we will have RCS. And I think, really, if we didn't waste most or all of that fuel trying to get back, then it would have, or trying to correct our thing, then it might have gone okay. But nonetheless, I mean, I think we could, in principle, get out of this situation if we just give ourselves maybe even, half of this fuel. So, we'll just bring this up real quick and we'll transfer in. In fact, I'm going to hope that maybe what we can do is we might just deorbit this stage, which means that this is going to turn into it's going to turn into a descent, direct descent mission, which is not what I had hoped for. I mean, I think if we didn't waste that fuel, then it might have been a little bit easier. Of course, we're going to want some monopropellant to get off the surface, or to adjust our orbit once we get into the surface, and because the spacecraft is so light, I think that's not going to be a hard thing to do. So we'll just transfer in all of our monopropellant. And hopefully we will have a better sort of thing going on here. So we'll go ahead and we will, I guess, bring this thing up. Let's see what we got here. We'll just, that's strange, why can't, there we go. I'd hoped to have just a little bit more fuel when we got off of the moon. That means, of course, that we're going to have to be a bit more, we'll have to be a bit more conservative in our fuel use. We're going to have to definitely, leave a lot more fuel behind so that we can power, our descent, or ascent stage, and we'll have to make that decision once we land, just to see how much fuel we have, if we can in fact leave. Because of the nature of this beast, I probably should have put a docking port on top just in case. But the only way we can really dock is if we hit this thing from the bottom, which is going to be tricky at best. So, I think we're going to have a bit of an extended stay up here on this moon. So let's just make sure these engines are activated, because we definitely want, these things to work when we land. And I think we are pretty close to the side of the moon we want to be on, so the question is now, how do we pick a site that we want to go to? And I think we'll just pick somewhere around here or so. And just hopefully null out our velocity at the proper time. So we have 107 meters per second to kill, which I sure hope we have enough delta V to do. I'm just going to, in the meantime, I'm going to park this thing just in case we do have enough fuel in an orbit that would be easy for us to reach, or rather in a direction. And so we'll just leave this thing to the north, and we will go ahead and undock. Use our RCS to get us up a little bit. And then, I guess what we'll do then is we will begin to deorbit. We've already missed our point here, unfortunately. So I wish there was a way to unset the target. That would be kind of cool. But as it stands, we need something that'll allow us to get down with minimum fuel usage, and we can correct that later on. I'm just going to go for 100 delta V and hope that it is enough. The nice thing about this is that this lighter craft, we can get a little bit more delta V out of it. And so, we'll just go ahead, we'll start that burn now. And that should not take long at all. I'm thinking even at this point, that's good enough. We don't need, we don't really need to, do anything more here. We just need to, go ahead and land. And we used, a fair amount of our orbital velocity getting down, so we're just going to get this thing into a state that's easy to land. Let's see, where are we at now? We're at 2500, so I think we should start considering, I should definitely kill that maneuver node. We should definitely start considering, you know, slowing this thing down just a little bit and nulling out our velocity. I'm gonna go ahead and bring down the landing gear. And maybe just one quick burst to bring down our relative velocity to the surface would probably not be such a bad idea. Let's see, and we can probably go ahead and hopefully this thing will go up. And hopefully I won't use all my fuel in bringing this thing down. We'll kill all of our horizontal velocity here. And that will pretty much get us where we want to go. So now the question is going to be, if we're going to have enough fuel to get back, and I think the answer to that is probably going to be yes, but we may not be able to take our descent stage with us, unfortunately. So we've got this whole, looks like we're slightly offset. And we even have our shadow. Yeah, our shadow is right there. Oh, well, that did not go down as intended. That may be a little bit more difficult to recover from than... Yeah, I would definitely call that more difficult to recover from than I intended. Let's see, do we have a quick save for this? So yeah, fortunately, one of the things that we invented for this mission specifically was the ability to time warp. And I think when we get down here to, you know, about 15k, we're going to start nulling out our velocity. Because we are coming here at almost 500 meters per second. And we'll even use some of our RCS fuel to help us with this. And the hope here is that as we get closer to landing that we will you know, be able to get this thing down just a little bit easier. And so I'm going to continue to bring this down just a hair. I think we were coming in way too fast. This is bound not to bode too terribly well. Oh, there goes the whole kit and caboodle. Let's try this one more time. Because we can't get this thing down, I just neglected to, I was trying to be a little bit too conservative, I think. And so we'll just kick down our orbital velocity. That'll help us a little bit, I think. The question is, what is our velocity relative to the surface? Definitely do want to be careful here because it looks like we are coming in on a crater. We do want to get as soft as a landing as possible. Unfortunately, it seems that I've overcorrected a little bit, but that's going to be okay. I think we are, at least as far as I can tell, we are hitting flat ground. And I think, we will hit the surface pretty soon. We just have to, we have to be careful here, for sure. We don't want to overdo it. It's one of the things about the engines that I've chosen is that, we will have one hell of a time trying to land this thing. Unfortunately, these landing legs can take quite a deal of punishment. And there we go again. Fortunately, most of our fuel, it seems, is going to be, available to us. So if we can land this thing upright, then that'll be nice, for sure. We're just gonna have to do some, finagling. So of all the places I could have picked to land this thing, I of course chose a crater. Maybe with, some clever usage of RCS, I could, in principle, get this thing up to where it needs to be. Well, that pretty much kills our ability, I think, to get back to the departure stage. And so we're going to solely depend on RCS to get back up, I think. Well, that and our limited fuel. Fortunately, I think, I believe that means that, we won't have as much trouble getting off. I mean, we're already inclined here, so we just have to, we just have to do our thing here. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to bring out, Kerbinauts' national hero to plant the flag. So, let's just go ahead, we'll jump down, and we'll go out here and we will, bring out our flag. So we're not far enough from the spacecraft. There we go. So what shall we call this thing? I guess we'll call it, here after much struggle. And I guess we'll put, the docking clamp as evidence. As evidence of Kerbin's, first mission to the moon. And of course, we can do other things as well. If we wanted to, we could go explore this crater. We could, of course, bring Bill Kerman out as well. Because after all of this, he probably doesn't want to, stay inside. I mean, somebody has to be first, though. Somebody has to be the first person to step, onto the moon or whatever. And unfortunately, there's not going to be much in the way of science. But I mean, look at that. They're as happy as can be. I mean, there is really no beating that. I mean, hell, it looks like Bill is even happier than Jebediah at this point, which is kind of strange. He's one of those guys that usually freaks out. So I guess now it's probably time for us to consider going back. And I definitely think that we don't want to belabor this mission any more than we have to, just because of the fact that if we did, whoa, what did I do there? Let's see if I can get back, because I want, yeah, there, I want to switch to that. Because I want to, now switch to Jebediah Kerman and get this thing going. And so the cool thing is that we don't need a particularly good orbit for this. And we still have our parachutes, it looks like, so we're actually going to be able to get back up and land. So we will just come back in here and we'll use what little amount of fuel we have to get into orbit. We're not going to worry about docking back to the service module because now that we've destroyed it, there's really no chance that we're going to be able to do anything about it. And we're going to go to 90 as soon as we can. So, that should bring us in orbit, hopefully. And, this is going to be the part, of course, that really we want to be careful about, because we are already pretty low on fuel. We want to be above the, surface, at least to the point to where, you know, we can avoid any mountains or whatnot. So our orbital velocity needs to probably change around here, so I'm gonna bring out that orbit. It's gonna raise our apo up just a little bit, probably. But you know what, it's okay, because we do have some fuel to spare. And the main thing we want to worry about is getting home. So, how much of a burn is that going to be? I reckon it's going to be about 10 seconds or so worth of fuel to burn, so, maybe a little bit more, but we don't have to be precise here because we have RCS to increase our inclination. Or not our inclination, but our, you know, our whatchamacallit. Our velocity. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead, we'll start that burn, we'll see how much fuel we have. And the question is it going to be enough? I mean, I think it probably will. We are just going to have to, we have another maneuver node going. That is not good. We do not want to reach escape velocity. And we apparently failed to kill that maneuver node right there. And so, of course, the idea is that if we can basically ride our RCS fuel back, then we can at least get, exactly where we want to go. At least maybe what I should do is I should, for the most part, try to get this thing down as low as possible, and then use the Oberth effects to decrease our fuel consumption. And so, unfortunately, this is going to take a while. It's going to take 3 hours, or thereabouts. And why can't I select that? Yes, I'm going to... And the idea, I guess, is that we are going to try to get this thing down as much as we can. And that will put us in a bizarre orbit, but once we reach apoapse, then we can very easily get back to where we want to go to. So, yeah, let's just prepare to do that. I guess first of all we need to figure out where that node's going to be. So let's just time warp over. We'll leave behind our other stage, which we will deorbit eventually. Just because, we don't want this thing to end up, taking too much in the way of, our resources. And we'll turn on RCS here in a bit. We'll start that initial burn here at about 10 seconds, because we're bound to run out of fuel. But if we use RCS to help us, then we will at least have a chance of, getting there. Because we have plenty of RCS fuel, right? And it's not going to be the world's easiest thing to come back from, but we can do it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much thinking, we got 2 minutes, and we got all of this fuel. I kind of wish that I put more, more RCS jets onto this, because this thing does use fuel at a very, very slow rate. So, of course, one of the things I think we're going to look into eventually is if we're going to continue this Earth orbit rendezvous, we need to look at a way to put more fuel in, and I guess to even design our spacecraft with action groups so we don't accidentally waste it. I mean, that was the thing that killed us, is that we had our, 2 engines going that could have potentially damaged those other 2 engines that really, I guess, could have killed us in the long run. But I mean, we have plenty of fuel. I mean, or plenty of RCS fuel, so we can get back. I mean, and the whole docking thing does, kind of suck. That it does make Earth orbit rendezvous just a little bit harder. So, I mean, I think that this is not going to be as easy to, pull off with Earth orbit rendezvous. But when we send our next mission here, then we could, in principle, do something closer to Apollo. And I think for that, that means that I need to build bigger rockets. Just because, you know, building these bigger rockets, I think, does help tremendously. Maybe I've just been a little bit too conservative. So, we're getting pretty close to this thing. You'll notice we're gonna hit here pretty soon, and I'm just going to, while we're waiting to hit that orbit, because it's gonna be 3 hours, I'm going to take the, I'm gonna take this, you know, this service module, and I'm going to, well, first of all, I'm going to unthrottle this, and I am going to, use what little RCS fuel is left on it. Well, I say what little RCS fuel, there's actually a bunch of RCS fuel, but I'm going to bring down that apoapse as much as I can, because of course there is no fuel on this thing aside from our RCS fuel. So, this thing, of course, is going to get to crash into the surface. And in reality, we probably could leave it up here, maybe even use it as part of a space station, but who wants to do that? I mean, this thing on its own is not going to be enough to, you know, to really can our velocity. Now, the only thing we need to be careful of here is we want to make sure that we do not crash into the landing site. You know, that could be a bit of a problem. Nobody wants to crash into the landing site. So I'm gonna turn on RC, or the, you know, the other thing. And I think we're going to be pretty safe from that here. So hopefully this thing will just sort of crash. I think we're fairly safe here. We're not going to get anywhere near the landing site, so that takes care of that bit of space debris. Not what I wanted to do. Let's see if KSP crashes. Because it is sometimes want to do that. And I think the answer to that is probably going to be yes. Or maybe not. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I probably should change the key binding for that. That was the entire trouble there, is that I did Shift Tab and it screwed everything up. So yeah, we're just going to come back over here. I'm going to kill my throttle. And I'm going to get ready to bring this thing down. So, what's the deal with the Oberth effect anyway? Well, the idea is that when you end up moving at a very high velocity, which we are, we're going to be, when we enter this orbit, we're going to be moving about 3 kilometers per second, right? And because of that, we are going to have a lot of velocity. Oh, a lot of fuel velocity. And the idea with the Oberth effect is whenever your rocket is moving with a lot of energy, your fuel gets a lot of energy too. And so you can actually use that to make your rockets just a little bit more efficient. There we go. And so we did miss Apple Apps just a little bit, but that's okay. We want to be pointing retrograde for this, of course. And that RCS fuel has a tiny amount of thrust, but as you'll notice, our periapse is coming down really, really quickly. And that's going to be very useful to us because even though this RCS fuel is really low thrust, we are bringing down our periapse enough to where, you know, it would make sense to continue burning like this. And we have plenty of fuel left. If not, then, you know, we're going to be in trouble. But I think it should be enough for us to at least get a ballistic trajectory with the planet. Unfortunately, like, this is the slow part with what we're trying to do. We are trying to, you know, get down as much as we can. And, what we may eventually have to do is get out and push. Because if we run out of fuel, which at this point seems to be very likely, then we aren't really going to be going anywhere. That could be a problem. Now, of course, the issue here is going to be that, you know, we're really very close to this. But, I mean, I wonder if Jebediah maybe gets out and pushes. And I mean, to be fair, this is not something that I'm very good at. Cannot save while on a ladder. Let's see, F5. Well, there we go. I'm thinking, though, what we could do is we could, you know, turn on our RCS. And this is the part that does confuse me a little bit, like, I wonder, can we stabilize this? And what's our rocket fuel like? So, if we get out and push him, we're going to have to be very careful about this because, you know, we do, you know, want to keep our heading intact. But I imagine we can steadily bring down our periapsis as we've done here. And of course, we just have to be careful not to use up so much fuel that we can't get back into into our, thingy. The weird thing is that you get infinite RCS fuel for your kerbinauts whenever they end up, re-entering the capsule or whatever. See, we're gonna get it down to about 25 or so, maybe even just 30. And, oh, what have we done here? We are not stable. And so, there is, this thing that we gotta do. Let's just null out our velocity here. Unfortunately, this seems to be the kind of thing where it really helps to, use your intuition a bit more. Let's see. No, go back up. Up. Let's see, did this help us any? I mean, that's the question. There we go. I mean, it looks like it might have just a little bit. Guess it's gonna be Bill's turn this time. And we're just going to, come out here. Be very careful about this, because, last time we did end up, bringing this thing out a little bit too much. So, I mean, this thing has essentially been Murphy's Law in full motion, right? It looks like we are very slightly having an effect. Fortunately, our combined with the Oberth effects, and, the infinite fuel that's associated with these, Kerbals jetpacks, I think we can get this down significantly. And that'll help us out a lot, for sure. We just, we have to be careful. We have to, we have to not get Jebediah and Kerman stranded from the spacecraft, of course. And I mean, fortunately, these things have an unrealistic amount of delta V on them. I mean, they have like, I think it's some 200 delta V. Are we out of fuel already? Or did I just... I think that must have been me. Well, what is going on here? Why can't I turn on my RCS? We'll just give it a little bit more of a push before we go, because we like to live dangerously. And I think slowly but surely we are going to, we're going to get this thing taken care of. And so what is our Well, that is kind of weird. I don't know if that's really had much of an effect at all. And I mean, what are we in? What are we in orbit of anyway? Maybe what I should have done, and I'm gonna try this, I'm going to, try this at periapsis where our orbital velocity will be, you know, close to zero. So, I mean, otherwise these guys are going to be in orbit for... Whoa, what happened here? I'm continually... Did I get a gravity assist by the moon? That is unfortunate. That is very unfortunate. That means that... Wow. What are the odds of that happening? I mean, these guys essentially have no hope of getting back at this point. I mean, I just don't think we have enough fuel. I mean, I guess we could try out periapsis, but that is... We have been in space for... Oh no, look at that, we're... Wait a minute, we're... Hey, look at that, we are going to get a little bit closer. Maybe this wasn't such a bad deal, after all. So we've got this weird gravity assist thing from the moon going on that is, of course, causing us to gain a lot of velocity. And whoa, holy shit, there we go. Well, that did help us quite a bit. Of course, you know, that's part of the deal is that, you know, we're almost a month into space now. You know, Mission Control is working furiously to get us back on track. And of course, we missed our window there. Fortunately, at least, this is taking a little bit... It's about a day or so every time we orbit, so... These guys are probably not in the best, you know, position to return to the planet right now. And that is, of course, going to mean that they have thus far, as brave explorers, pulled off an unimaginable feat. Which is something kind of like the following, to where, let's see, do we have much in the way of monopropellant left? I mean, now, of course, there's this whole issue, of course, that now we're outside of the moon's sphere of influence. We're not going to be able to get that gravity assist, I reckon. Which means, at this point, getting out and pushing is our only option. By the way, that wasn't really my idea. That was Scott Manley's idea. I do, on occasion watch and he just happens to point out that this is more or less if you want to recover from a situation like this and you have a Kerbal, then it is the best one of the best ways to do it, because I mean, really, what have you got to lose? I mean, it's the one thing that Kerbals do seem to have is an infinite number of resources. Now, whether, of course, that has done anything to help us, I mean, it's having a very slight effect on us. Possibly not enough. Whoa. Let's just turn that off before we waste too much fuel. I mean, I don't know if this is going to be one of those things that I bet you it's going to take forever to do. Which means that, we have to be very well positioned here. Now, apparently just knocked Jebediah Kerman out. It's... These things are wont to happen. But, I mean, the flip side is that, he can, he can pretty much, theoretically, like, with enough, time pushing this, he can get us to where we need to go. Now, I'm gonna live a little bit dangerously. I'm gonna wait until we go to 15 now. And that is kill our rotation, because we do not want to rotate. So, yeah, let's, go ahead and get this thing going. I mean, this thing is probably not the best way to go. And of course, I entered it upside down, of course. Did that help us much? I mean, it looks like it helped us a little bit. Probably not as much as we would have wanted it to, but I mean, it's, at least we are close by, and we can get this thing hopefully going in a direction that will lower that periapsis, because I mean, it does seem to be having a bit of an effect. It's not, it's not as it's not as pronounced as using the RCS fuel, but it is, it is, useful, at least here. I mean, it's unfortunately going to take a while. And I think the question will have to become whether or not it would just be easier for us to rescue our Kerbals in orbit. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll build a recovery vehicle and rescue these guys. Oh, are we? Oh no! Well, that is no good. How much fuel do we have left? Oh, we're flirting with death here. Come on, turn on your jetpack. I do not understand this. There we go. Looks like we're gonna have to be just a little bit more careful, because we barely have any fuel at all. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that we can make it at this point. I mean, I think Bill might be able to get back. We need to be very conservative with our fuel. And unfortunately, we don't have a nav ball or anything. We're just going to have to eyeball it. So I suppose rule number 1 in space is do not freak out. And let's see, how close are we? We are, as far as I know, we're pretty far, away. We're gonna have to be careful here because with as little fuel as we have, we cannot afford to screw up any more than we already have. I mean, obviously, the idea that we should push, our spacecraft to get home, maybe not the safest of ideas. I mean, it's certainly not the easiest idea to put into practice. We have like 1.5% here. We're possibly going to lose Bill, which I think, to be fair, it's not like the Kerbals apparently have very little in terms of, in terms of needs. Just because it seems like these guys, I mean, these guys have already been out here for some 30 days or so. And I mean, the main question is, whether or not, we can, do anything to take care of that. And I mean, the unfortunate thing here is that, of course, they will eventually get back. As damaged as this spacecraft is, I mean, we could, in principle, build a craft that could intercept them, and when it does that, then, we could, in principle, rescue them. Assuming, that we don't, overdo it. Let's see. Just slow down our horizontal velocity some. Let's see, we want We want to come down just a little bit. Are we gonna have enough fuel? Perhaps. I think we have already strayed a little bit too far past the point of no return. So we have 2% pack fuel left. So to console Bill, come on, yes, we got him back. So anyway, I think what we're going to do is we're going to construct a rescue vehicle, because this situation has obviously gotten out of hand. I mean, we are still, we're closer than we were, but it's 27 days in, almost a month, so, you know, we have to be careful about that in any future sort of thing we do. So the next mission will be to construct a rescue craft. Anyway, this has been Thy Lord Root, and I will see y'all later.